Hi, I'm Craig Bell.
And this is John Perkins.
We have a question for you. Do you have faith when you read it or faith when you really need it? We'll talk about that today on Take Five.
Food for the soul, helping you to thrive. 5 minutes to renew your mind. Take five.
There's a story told of a man who was attempting to cross the frozen St. Lawrence River into Canada. Unsure of whether the ice would hold, the man first tested it by laying one hand on it. Then he got down on his knees and tenderly began to make his way across. When he got to the middle of the river, he trembled with fear as he heard a noise behind him. He thought the ice was beginning to crack. When he looked back, he saw a team of horses pulling a carriage coming down the road toward the river. Upon reaching the river, it didn't even stop, but bolted right onto the ice and right past him, where he sat on all fours, trembling and embarrassed. So how's your faith holding up? Is it strong enough to get up and walk? Or are you crawling? Sometimes, John, our faith gets weak, man, and we're crawling along when God expects us to run. We lack the faith that we need to get up and walk when God says walk. And our faith seems to be what lacks, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I find a lot of times we lack on our faith when we need it the most.
You know, like we said at the beginning, John, it's easy to say we have faith as we read it, but to really have the faith when we need it is a different story.
Yeah, there's so many scriptures, Brother Craig, in the Bible that I was thinking about that it's so obvious that we have faith when we read it, when we hear it preached, when we heard it sing about. It's so easy to have faith, but in these hard times of life, when it hits us, that's when we really need it. And I just wonder how many of us really has that kind of faith when we really need it.
Sure. And in fact, the scripture says in Hebrews chapter 11 that it's impossible to please God without faith.
Yes.
And part of that verse is that we have to believe that he is, that he's able to answer prayer when we come to him. And if not, that's really a slap in the face of God.
Yes, you mentioned Hebrews chapter 11, the first verse in chapter 11 says this: Now faith is the subject of things hoped for, but the evidence of things not seen.
Right.
Brother Craig, I heard a story a long time ago about a community. They was in a drought. Had a bunch of farmers that was relying on the rain. And a bunch of the people from the church got together every night for a week straight to pray for rain. And only on the third night, there was a young lady that came, and she had her umbrella. And the people was amazed that she had an umbrella when it wasn't going to rain. But what she had the faith that their prayers was going to be answered.
I guess you could say the umbrella was the symbol of her faith at that moment, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. I thought about when Peter seen Jesus walking on the water, he had no doubt, he had no fear, and he told the Lord, he said, Lord, if that be you, bid me to walk on the water. And Jesus said, come. And he just got right out of that boat and started walking on the water. But at the time he needed it the most, after he was out of the boat, after all the disciples was away from him, after Jesus was still a little ways from him, his guys got off of Christ and he began to sink. He really needed that faith right then.
Yeah, that was the moment the talk didn't help. He needed the real deal in that moment.
Yes, and there's so many times in our life, Brother Craig, that when we think that we have everything together, we think we got a little bit of money in the bank, we think that we got our health, we think we got our whole life ahead of us, and we have faith in God that he's going to protect us and that he's going to see us through. But what when we go to the bank and we're out of money? What happens when we go to the doctor and the doctor just shakes his head, there is no hope? And so many times then we lose our hope, but that we lose our faith. But that's when we need the most faith. That's when we need God the most. That's when we need to rely upon the Spirit of the Lord the most.
Right. John, it says in Matthew chapter 13, where Jesus was in his own country, he said, he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. And I wondered when I read that, John, how many times that we have missed out because of our lack of faith.
Yeah, yeah. And it'd be awful to miss such a great blessing that God has in store for us just because of our lack of faith.
Right. It's been said that faith sees the invisible, believes the incredible, and receives the impossible. So how about you? Do you have faith just when you read it, or do you really have faith when you need it?